What's up, people? Welcome to this episode of the Buy the Hood podcast, a webcast, because I don't know how you're consuming this content. I'm your host, as always. My name is Jimmy, and as we start off every show, that is with gratitude. Shout out to all of our supporters, all new YouTube subscribers, Buy the Hood University, Buy the Hood Ownership Camp, everything we got going on. Appreciate everybody for all of the support. Shout out to people still purchasing our book, On Your Time and Space. We had a couple books sold this week, so I always want to shout everybody out. Got my partner Crown in the building with me. Core, what's up, good brother?
That's really good, Jim. Everything good with you, man?
Listen, man, I ain't got no need complaining, man. I woke up this morning, so
Yeah,
I'm here.
every day above ground is a chance to get better, man.
Always, always, always. For those who don't know, our show is dedicated to talking about Black wealth as well as personal finance because that's what we're interested in. Um, do all the YouTube and stuff, like, comment, subscribe, do all that good stuff, and give us some feedback on our topic, right? So we try to make our podcast, brief, but give our perspective on things going on within that world of personal finance and wealth. Here's a nice little article for us. And by the way, I will put the article in the show notes as well as the description. And by the way, while you listen to the pod, the people that listen to the audio, because that's where most of our actual listeners come from, the audio, do me a favor, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, the big three, just give us 5 stars. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I ain't gonna lie to you. That's what we want out here. All right. So with that being said, though, Core, we got a real estate topic, but it's bigger than a real estate topic, and I'll explain to you why. But let's get into it. And here is the headline. It says lack of affordable homes for sale hits minorities hardest. Analysis shows a typical Black household could afford just 7% of all listed homes in the year of 2023. So let's get into it. Shout out to Gabriela Cruz Martinez, who's a personal finance writer, and this is on Yahoo Finance. It says that nobody can afford a home right now. That's how a vast majority of will-be buyers felt last year, according to this analysis, which was done by Redfin, by the way. Shout out to Redfin. And it says that was closer to being true for minority households. The average Black household could afford just 7% of listings for sale last year on a median income, while white households could afford 22% of listings. The share was nearly as bad for Latino households, which could afford just 10% of homes for sale, and Asian households could afford 27% of homes for sale at the median income. So, first of all, that's bad for everybody, but what's the old saying, Core? When everybody else
Get a cold, we get the flu.
yeah, and financially speaking, when everybody else gets a cold, Black folks get the flu, right? Just 7%, and that's based on the median. And I'm stopping at this point in the article just to really tell you how dire that is. And the median is a better representation. It's better than the average because the median gets rid of the outliers, top and bottom. So you really get an idea of how people are hurting. Just 7% is all they could afford. So it says the affordability picture was bleak overall. Just 16% of homes for sale in 2023 were affordable to the typical U.S. household, the lowest share on record since Redfin started tracking this metric over a decade ago. Overall, the share of affordable listings in the U.S. dropped to 352,500 last year, down from 596,135 a year earlier, which is a 41% decrease, and down from over 1 million during the prior decade. The cost of home ownership rose even in historically affordable areas due to limited inventory, propping up prices. So supply and demand, right? Limited inventory, so therefore prices go up. But who's going to buy them though? So it says there's signs that 2024 could be better, but here's something else I just want to get into, right? There's higher mortgage rates, obviously, which has an impact on this in terms of the affordability. But we always talk about, and not just us, people in general talk about this racial wealth gap, which I'm not even really interested in talking about no more because the only way to close the racial wealth gap is really through policy, and that's based on things that have been done historically, which could be for another show, probably a Friday show. We can really break that down. But this talks about the racial affordability gap, and that's an interesting one. So not the racial wealth, but the racial affordability. So even the most affordable metropolitan areas in the U.S. became less accessible to Black and Latino home buyers last year as both prices and rates soared. In Detroit, where mortgage payments are among the lowest in the country, just 31.8% of listings were affordable to the typical Black household and 50.2% for the average Latino household. That's much lower than the 66% for the typical white household. this is terrible. Even in Detroit, I mean, Detroit's already depressed because Dan Campbell don't know how to kick field goals, but that's for another time. So the average, it says homes listed in Detroit were priced at an average of 85,000 in December, up 21.4% from 2022. And the funny thing about this article, Core, is I've been screaming at the top of my lungs on several shows. I probably did podcasts about it. I know we talk about it on Friday all the time. The working class family will not be able to buy a home anywhere in this country pretty soon. And let me read a couple more things and then we can close this article, though. But here is the chart so you can see the chart for those watching the video. The chart just shows what the median household income is, for race. In 2021 as well as 2022. So you see what it is. So people always like to use the overall median income when describing things. And, this is why, I know that there's a lot of personal finance folks out there talking like, you just got to cut back on your coffee and like, yo, y'all got to chill, bro. Like folks ain't got bread out here. The median black family is at $52K. And I don't know if y'all been in the market lately. $52K ain't gonna go a long way in terms of, especially if you got a family, you got gas, food, clothing, shelter. Anyway, I don't want to jump on a soapbox to tell you that you not having your frappuccino ain't really gonna help with that, doggy. You got to get your bread up, and you got to get what's owed to you. But with all that being said, though, mortgage rates, supply and demand, all of these factors make it so the average black family can't afford to buy a home anywhere in the country. We talk a lot about our local market in Philadelphia, but this is literally looking across the world, well, not the world, excuse me, the country, and saying that the same thing exists in other major metropolitan areas. So I'm not going to just sit here and continuously read this article because I want Corey to give his perspective. But this is the reason why when people come out and say, more black folks are investing in the stock market and everybody wants to tell you how great that is. It's like, yo, you got to really look at everything else that's going on, right?
Yeah.
We talked about that in our Friday show. There are more black people in number. This is how statistics play game. There are more black people in number, but the amount they're investing is few and far between. So overall, that's a good thing, but they really ain't putting no bread in. Like, you know what I'm saying? It's nothing wrong. You got to start where you are, but let's talk about facts. At the same time that is happening, we can't afford to buy a home. And by the way, this is just buying a home. We can get into the data of rent too, because rent is going through the roof as well, right? So more people can't buy a home, so they're forced to rent. And if people that own homes know that rent them homes, what do you think they're going to do to the prices? Besides the fact that their holding costs are more. Taxes, insurance, repairs, everything costs more. So I got a couple points I want to make, but Core, I want to give you the time to give your perspective on everything that I've read thus far, good brother.
All right, so the first thing is those numbers are scary as hell, bro. 7% of black families can afford it. Like that's crazy with the median income, which means 93% of our families are living below what the level is in their city.
Yes,
which tells me that which plays into other things like crime rate and all of this other, all of this stuff that goes
everything's
along
connected.
with living,
Everything's connected.
everything that goes along with living below what the median is in your city.
Mm-hmm.
Police stations are stationed in places where the housing stock is below the median. You know what I mean? So like it's a mess. That's an absolute mess. The second thing is something that you touched on. You got to get your bread up. Like that's the bottom line of it. Like don't nothing move but the money. If you ain't talking money, you ain't talking about nothing. Like people is not trying to hear nothing that you talking about if you ain't talking about money. Like they just not trying to hear it. So like you really like at a point where you got to choose between peeling back and getting more, you might have to step on the gas and get more. You know what I mean? Because peeling back don't work in this economy because it ain't nothing to peel back. Like everything costs like $4 million. Like it's just nutty. Like I was telling you during the pandemic, between that first year of the pandemic, which was 2019, 2020, and then from 2021 on, the prices was so outrageous. It was just nutty. Like during the pandemic, like a dozen of eggs was like 69 cents. Like right now, a dozen eggs like $2.50. Like you know what I mean? Like that's like a eight, like like 5 times what it cost a couple years ago. You know what I mean? Like 500% increase. So like, you know what I mean? Like everything costs more. Everything. So if everything costs more, and then on top of that, people don't make enough money. What did that tell you? Like, it's just pure math that we in trouble.
You know,
Like,
I had someone tell me the other day they were complaining about the inflation on their Mary Jane because they have a Mary Jane habit that they're trying to maintain, and it was like they got to figure out how to deal with that because of inflation. And I'm laughing as they're telling me this. And they're like, "Yo, it's not funny." I'm like, I'm laughing because everything is affected by this,
everything.
including people trying to get work on the streets. Like inflation affects literally everything.
Yeah, man, it's bugging, right? Because and then what's happening is because these jobs know that everything is tight for people, they're paying people less, right? Because the highest cost for almost every single employer is paying people.
Labor.
Labor is the highest cost. So what's happening is you getting squoze on both ends because the government and all of the surrounding data means that everything costs more. But then on the backside, with the employers knowing that everything costs more, they know that more people are desperate for jobs, and so they're actually lowering what they're paying people.
So here's the thing, right? I got a lot of thoughts about like. So currently, I'm reading a bunch of books, right?
I don't know
But the
how
more,
y'all do that.
but the more that things happen, the more I read and the more I like watch the world, the more everything comes into play. One of the books that I read pretty much every year is Progress and Poverty by Henry George, which talks about a land value tax, which could help with a lot of this stuff. That's forward thinking. That's crazy. But the two books that I was thinking of in reference to this is Saifuddin Amos' book is The Fiat Standard, which is a really good book. And he breaks down the overall system, like how the fiat system works and how it's a debt-based system, and how because of that and because of the way inflation is used, it literally affects everybody. There's no one that's not affected by it. And the other book I'm reading is called Black AF History by Michael Harriot, and he's telling histories lessons in history. But the funny thing is, through his lessons in history, while I'm reading the other book, because like I'll go one day, I'll read this book all day, then I'll read the other one. That's how I read multiple books, by the way. Like one day I'm dedicated to this book, next day that. But it also helps because sometimes things are connected in a way that I would have never connected it. So he's telling the story in the Black AF History about like the history of Haiti and how Citibank, the bank that's around today, how you can trace the wealth that was put in that through slavery, right? But when you see that, and then you see how inflation affects everybody, bro, this whole system needs to be burnt to the ground. Now, obviously, that's not going to happen. So then you got to figure out how to operate within the system because you know that it's not going to be burnt to the ground.
Only thing you know why it's not going to be burnt to the ground because people got to shed blood to do it, and everybody is trained not to do that.
Yeah, I mean it's conditioning. But it's just like in reading those two things. Like yesterday, I was reading the fiat standard, and today I was reading the other one, and I'm sitting there like, this stuff is connected in a weird way. In a weird way because you talk about wealth that's being created, going all the way back using the bodies of other folks. Even even in the book when he breaks down how Wall Street got its name and how that's tied back, like all those things, and you see the wealth that is created. So there's another piece of this too. There's a YouTube video I was watching recently. I think it's a finance channel. They do documentaries, Phineas, whatever it's called, and they have one about the history of Citibank as well. But the funny part is they don't mention what he's talking about. They don't mention the slave part. They're just talking about the history of the bank. But because all these things are, I'm taking in all this content at one time just through study. You start to see how things are connected. and you see how we are really as consumers and just as people trying to live, right, are really getting screwed. Because if employers, right, let's just say you're working, you're at work, and who gave me this analogy was Rich in our group. He was like, yo, if you're at work and you make X amount of money, and then the boss comes in and says, yo, everybody, I'm cutting your salary by X. And they do it across the board, across the country. Everybody who works a job gets their salary cut by X. Folks will be in the street with pistols. But they don't have to do that. They just
tax.
Yeah, but they're not even tax you, because even if you tax everybody extra tax, like people will jump in arms. But people have learned to accept inflation, which is a silent tax.
It's the same tax. Well, inflation is taxation.
Yeah, but
it's silent taxation.
But what I'm saying is, most people don't look at it as a tax. You're being taxed. You're being taxed without it seeming as though it's a tax. We just have learned to
say inflation is a tax.
But we've learned to, but it's not considered a tax.
If you're paying more.
No, but what I'm saying is, so theoretically you can say it is, but it's not considered. It's not considered. It's not.
In accounting terms, it's not considered a tax.
If you look at our tax code, there's nothing there. And in fact, we've learned to accept it so much that even when they sell us this thing where inflation should be 2% per year, we just accept it.
Inflation hasn't been 2% since the 1920s, bro. Like.
Well, inflation was before 71. Inflation was kind of under control, but you got to go. The Nixon in 71 and the gold standard is when all that went everything went haywire. Everything went haywire. And here's why.
Listen, man, we know how things happen though, right? Because we know who really actually runs this world. Like, everybody has an answer to who runs the world, but we actually know. We know the answer.
I mean, they're playing right in front of your face. I mean, yeah, we know. But the thing is, though, if you go back and see how that played out, because think about it this way. Think about how different the economy would be if every specific dollar had to be backed by something, right? It had to be backed by gold.
Because what happens is you can't overspend. And you can't. And so what it does is it artificially controls governments, and governments don't like to be under control. The reason why the government came off the gold standard is because the fiat standard allows the government free reign.
So you just can create debt out of thin air, and it's almost like they're forcing.
You can do literally anything you want. The war machine needs money, and if you have to have currency backed by something, you can't have an unlimited war machine. You just can't do it.
Think about it this way. Think about if you had to run your household without credit cards. Well, all you have to spend is what you have. You become more frugal. You actually become a better saver. You figure out a way to make things work in a different way. But once we put credit cards in the air, I mean, that's kind of the same thing. You just put now we got credit cards in the system.
Yeah.
Folks are out there spending, but why are they spending? Because this goes back to the system. Wants folks to spend. They don't care if it's debt. They want their swiping your card, because all they're gonna do is create more debt and create more debt and create more debt.
When the people who are in control want to control, the first thing they did was they enslaved the countries by giving them the money and then having them tax the people. That's how.
Think about it, like economics, right? So you get in the politics now, geopolitics, but like, think about this. Getting back to the Haiti example, right? When Haiti fought in battle and won their independence, right? They couldn't beat them in the battlefield. So what did they do?
They put sanctions on.
Hit them with economic sanctions. Now, and the crazy part about those sanctions, by the way, y'all should read that book. I'll put that in the description. The Black AF History is Michael Harriot killed that book, but I knew a lot about this because I've seen several documentaries on it. But they put the economic sanctions, and even getting away from that, when they had that little beef on Russia, when Russia and Ukraine was beefing, what's the first thing they did there? They was like, all right, before we even pull the gloves off to do anything physically, take these economic sanctions.
And then Russia said, we're going to shoot you with an MX missile, and we're going to put warships on your John and F them economic sanctions, bro. Like, Russia was not having it.
But it affected it, though, because all those oligarchs was like, hold, doggy. They start looking backwards like, dog, you messing with my bread. You know how much money I got over there? You mess with someone's chicken, and you're going to have a problem, right? So I say all that to say, economics has been used as a weapon against the people and against governments and countries and everything else. Um, but having that understanding is really helpful, because then you have to figure out how to navigate in this nasty system that we have. So tying it back to our original conversation in terms of the lack of affordable housing, in terms of where we stand, what I was thinking about in reading this is, um, we got to start having households with multiple generations in it, and I hate to sound like an old geezer, like back in my day, because honestly, back in my day, that was a thing. But
so coming up, my grandmother lived in the house, and then my mom moved out. And when my mom moved out, my uncle moved in, and he raised his family. And then when he got his money up, he moved out. And then my aunt moved in. And then my grandmother moved my great grandfather and to take care of him. And then we had some cousins and stuff come stay with us. So literally, it was at least 2 or 3 generations always living in my grandmom's crib. Now, my mom's house, it was just us, but we lived 3 doors down. So we didn't even move off the block.
It's I've seen a lot of that though, like in the period I'm in now, where I see like people's parents are passing and things of that nature. So I didn't realize just how many people like have done the same thing, where it's like, yo, they live on the same block or right around the corner. Like people don't go too far from where they're raised at. But the
Because
point
they
is,
want to make sure that their parents go out in style. Like the reason I lived in Philly for so many years and so long is because my mom was having so many different issues with health, and moving away from the city at a certain point, I just wouldn't do it. I needed to be near my mother to make sure that things were being taken care of for her, at a great financial cost to myself and to my family. But
but she's family too, right? So
no, what I'm saying is,
I get what you're saying, though.
when you get married and you have kids, those kids become your family, and then your mother and the people that raised you become extended family and not your immediate family. Your immediate family is the people that you're responsible for. And so even though I love my mother, I was not responsible for her, even though I took care of her. You know what I mean? As an adult, and that's another thing we got to talk about generationally. I love my mother to death, but at a certain point, it became detrimental to my family, to my nuclear.
No, I understand that. But what I'm saying is, you're in a different boat. I'm speaking of like the people that can't afford, because you built a house in a different state, right?
Yeah.
But the data shows us most people don't have that ability. So if most people don't have that ability, what are some of the solutions or something we can do? Because at this point, right, we talk a lot about wealth, and building wealth and what wealth is used for in terms of like community. But right now, we gotta talk about survival. You know what I'm saying? Like that's where we at now. It's an election year. It's a lot of craziness going on. I'm talking about people having to be able to survive. And all I was thinking about it and thinking about this is, we may have households now where you have multiple generations. Like
we should be doing that. I'm just very, very uncomfortable with the idea of someone in my space.
I mean, again, this isn't you personally. But
I know, I'm just saying, but that's a lot of people are like that, which is why we don't have as much multi-generational.
I understand that, but that's problematic. Like again, when you talk about survival, you talk about survival.
Oh, listen,
it's a laugh at. That made me think about when I just see young boys be like, "Man, I ain't working that job for X amount of money," and then they get locked up. They get locked up, and they working for like
40 cents a day. Working for 40 cents a day.
I'm like, yo,
you ain't want to work for $6 an hour, but you working for 40 cents a day.
Yeah, $12 an hour wasn't enough for you, but now you out here, working for 40 cents a day. FOH. Anyway, that's what that reminded me of. Like when you talk about survival, you do what you got to do. Everybody out there watching though, give us your opinion on any of our conversation, because we always veer off into crazy places. But first of all, have you read either the Fiat Standard or Black Black AF history. Either one of those.
I've read the Fiat Standard. I have not read Black AF history, and I got to give Michael Harriot some love because he was, when I was on X Twitter, he was my favorite personality on.
Yeah, his book is fire. But the Fiat Standard by Saifuddin is dope. Is he's the same one that wrote the Bitcoin Standard, but the Fiat Standard actually is a little bit more interesting. I don't know. I like both of them because part of the Bitcoin Standard he was going off like he was going off.
Yeah, he was going absolutely nuts.
He was going off on tangents about like he was tying all kinds of craziness to it, so it kind of went off. But the Fiat Standard, in terms of the way he frames the system and gives the historical context, is good. But so have you read either of those books? And what do you think about that statistic that only 7% of the average Black family can afford to buy a house in this country?
That's trouble, dog.
What do you think about it? And do you think that it'll get better, or what are some of the things that we can do to literally survive out here in this world today? We talk a lot about, thriving and running the bag up, but what about survival, yo? What are some of the things we can do to make sure we survive, man? So those are the questions I want to leave the audience with. Don't forget, like, comment, subscribe. Again, we appreciate all the support. Every Friday we do a live and we do a Bitcoin giveaway. Sometimes we give away groceries, but for the most part, it's a Bitcoin giveaway. Friday, 7 p.m. on our YouTube channel and our Facebook page. And if you're watching this on Facebook, also like our Facebook page as well. Hit us up on all the social media platforms. It's at Buy the Hood, BUYTHEHOOD. Corey, you got the last words before we get out of here, bro?
Be good, man. Be safe. Take care of each other because the numbers say we should. Yeah, man.
It's crazy out here, man.
It's crazy as hell out here. So be good, be safe, take care of each other.
Absolutely. As we always say, it's not about how much money you make, it's about how much you keep. Game elevates, and we'll see you guys in our next episode. Peace.